Welcome back to the Own Your Becoming podcast. Today, we're talking about hormone balance and women's energy. So many women normalize exhaustion or anxiety because they think it's just part of life. But that doesn't have to be that way. Today, I have a guest, Daphne Myers, a national board certified health and wellness coach and certified high performance coach. She helps high achieving women break free from burnout and reclaim their energy, clarity, and purpose. Daphne teaches that small lifestyle changes can create big hormonal shifts. That's very aligned with my own philosophy. You own your becoming by knowing what levers you can control, how you eat, how you move, and how you think about the season of life. When you build a routine that nourishes you where you are, you set yourself up for success. You don't need to track every hormone or biohack every detail. It's about using your energy wisely on what truly matters. I'm excited for this conversation because Daphne breaks down how hormones actually respond to lifestyle shifts and why stress hormones like cortisol can throw everything else off balance. This episode isn't medical advice. It's an exploration of how daily choices shape your energy and hormones. Stay with us until the end. You'll leave knowing exactly which lifestyle shifts you can start today and why they work. Hi, Daphne. Welcome. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you into this work? What was the turning point that led you to focus on hormones and energy?
Hi, Wendy. I am so excited we're having this conversation. It's just such a valuable conversation that I wish I had been able to have 20, 30 years ago. So what brought me into this was, of course, personal journey, as I think for many of us. It really had to do with spending quite a few years outsourcing my health and thinking that my body was not something that I could actually have an influence on. And the journey led me to realizing that actually, when we own our health, knowing what to do with our bodies, that is what can help us make the big changes that we need to have the life that we want to create. And so my journey, it started in my teens. I had really painful cycles and they left me, 1 or 2 days every month just out of commission. And I was told over and over, this is normal, or here are some birth control pills to maybe bring things back into balance, hormones, or here's some painkillers, for the pain, so you can just get up and keep performing. And something for me, I just didn't really feel great about it. Plus, it just went on for such a long time that it also left me with a lot of anxiety about what I could actually do in my life. So, just feeling like I couldn't commit to things that required consistency because I knew that 1 or 2 days a month I was going to be taken out of the game. And so fast forward to early 20s and 30s, early adulthood, I had really fast-paced careers in media, film, events, international, and I would push really hard beyond what my body could really handle. And then I would crash at the end, have exhaustion. I'd get sick with something, a virus or something, and continued having these really painful cycles every month. So just trying to manage that, but again, not really getting much help from the medical community about what that was, and just being told this is all part of, sort of the changes that a body goes through and all of that. And so it really wasn't until I ended up with chronic fatigue, right? Like the crashes got worse. And at the end, I ended up with chronic fatigue. And I realized, okay, I may not heal from this, but this is my call to really see, like, what can I do about this? I've been outsourcing this to practitioners this whole time. What can I actually do? And so that was a real turning point for me because at that time, I basically left an almost 10-year relationship. I left my dream career and I moved to a different city to focus on my healing. And although along the way, I had been looking at different practices like Chinese herbs and acupuncture and a lot of different holistic practices as a way to alleviate my symptoms, I still hadn't gotten to the root cause of what this was all about. So as I went into this healing journey, I found a practitioner to help me with my body, and they focused on hormones and gut health. And they really saw that there was acute hormone imbalance because, of course, I'd been going at that point probably like 15 years, not feeling well. And then there were gut health issues And so we focused on both of those things. I also, at the same time, found a mentor who helped me with mindset. And that was all about helping me reduce stress because I was just going on stress high all the time. So helping me not only reduce stress in my life, like making different choices that brought less stress into my life, but they helped me be more resilient to the stress that was actually happening in my life, right? How I could actually manage that. And then I also had a spiritual guide who was helping me align with my values and helping me tune into my intuition. And so, with all of that at that moment, because I had stopped everything and was focused on my healing journey, within a couple of weeks, I felt my energy back. I was starting to be able to get out of bed. And within a couple months, I was hormones healed, no more chronic fatigue because I didn't even really know where it came from. And it just now wasn't there anymore. And I felt better than I had 20 years prior.
Wow.
And to me, that was a miracle. I mean, such a miracle that by doing these lifestyle shifts of, at that time, nutrition, body movement, aligning with what was important to me in my life, learning how to take more control over my thoughts. And
Mhm,
even things like old programming of what I thought I was capable of because I had been taken out of the game so much due to health issues. All of that together left me better than I ever could have imagined. And that's when I realized I really want to be helping others so that they
mhm,
don't have to spend 20 years suffering, feeling alone in their symptoms, and feeling like they have to shrink their life to fit their
mhm.
symptoms, right? We really can create a life that is aligned with us and that we are empowered in. So I wanted more than anything to go help women with that. And that's why I became a coach.
It's really encouraging to know that we have agency. And even when you're starting to feel bad or low energy, when this shift is, you're in the middle of the change, it's really encouraging to know that there are things you can do and they work and they
Yeah.
actually help you feel better. Yeah. Um, I wanted to ask you around the gut health. This is something we hear a lot about. And how can a woman know that what she's going through is related to gut health? And what is one simple thing that she can do?
hmm Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, gut health has kind of been more available in the media and everything for the last 10 years, I would say, about because before that, it was not known the influence that gut health had on so many other aspects of our health, hormones primarily, but also mental health, emotions, so many other parts of our well-being. So one way to know is a lot of people experience bloating. Like if you're experiencing bloating on a regular basis, if you're having trouble digesting in any way, either constipation or diarrhea, if you're experiencing any kind of gastric distress or pain, on a regular basis, obviously every now and then you may eat something that doesn't agree with you. That's a different thing. But anything on a regular basis that you're feeling in your gut area, that's an indication that there's something chronic going on there. Another way is, and this is sometimes people don't think about it, if you're feeling exhausted or down.
Mm,
For instance, my initial experience with exhaustion when I was a lot younger actually had to do with gut health and not with other factors. So it was about the fact that I have an intolerance to wheat protein, and I didn't know that back then. And the minute I cut that out for 30 days, it was just 30 days with no wheat protein, that completely disappeared. I also had had gastric issues, but the main thing that disappeared was just this fatigue, this kind of brain fog. That was due to, it's not just that what we're eating is affecting us, it's that it is changing the bacteria makeup in our gut. And there are different bacteria that we have in our microbiome that are responsible for different functions.
mm,
And some of those have to do with creating serotonin and dopamine in the brain that makes us happier. Some of them have to do with our immune system. So they're all different kinds of bacteria in there. And when we're either missing some or we're taxing them because of something that's not agreeing with us, that can lead to other issues that we don't even think of as originating in our gut.
mm. You said you cut out wheat protein. What's wheat protein exactly? Is it just anything that's wheat?
Yes. So in my case, it's wheat because there's some people who are gluten intolerant and gluten exists in other grains, for me, it was just particularly the wheat protein that was a problem. But back then, this was a long time ago. And I didn't know all the things that wheat is in, right? Like soy sauce at a Japanese restaurant or soups at a restaurant, salad dressings, deli meats. It's in so many things, and I didn't know that back then. So even when I had already had some alternative practitioners telling me sort of lay off of wheat, it's taxing your liver in whatever methodology they were going, it wasn't until someone said 0 wheat for 30 days, and they gave me a list of everything that it's in, and then I really stuck to that. And I didn't need to do the test at the end to see, normally the test at the end is you eat wheat and then your body responds really poorly and you can see the contrast. I didn't even need to do that because all my symptoms had gone away. Skin, I had had terrible acne, the terrible gastric issues I was having, even my cycles improved just from making that one change.
Mhm. I have a question around eating, gut health, and anti-inflammatory diet. So I read a lot about how we tend to be more inflamed in perimenopause, and how it's important to eat an anti-inflammatory diet, which includes a lot of vegetables and also includes eliminating a lot of inflammatory foods. So I'm curious, is that the same as gut health, eliminating all the inflammatory foods, or is gut health slightly different? We're looking at different things here.
So it's related. It's, obviously if you're eating an anti-inflammatory diet, that is also better for your gut. What we eat, we need to sort of see in terms of a whole lifespan. Like what we're giving our bodies, what our bodies are needing is so different at every phase of life. It's also very individual, right? It's so different for each person. So a lot of these are like generalizations of what most people need, and it's not for absolutely everybody. I
Mhm.
myself always felt like I was an exception to every rule out there. So I know what it feels like where you're like, I tried that, it doesn't work. So it's very
Yeah.
specific. And that's why personal knowledge is so important in this, right? Because we each need to try and find the things that work for us. But
Yeah.
what you're talking about is an anti inflammatory diet. Yes, it's also good for the gut. But when you're specifically doing it in a phase like perimenopause, the idea is that at that phase, the body is creating more insulin resistance, right? Which means that we're in a more inflammatory state when we eat things that maybe 10 years ago we could eat and the body could break it down and it would be fine. At this stage, our bodies are more sensitive to things like sugar, refined carbohydrates, things like that, that are very triggering and inflammatory. So at that phase, we're doing it in order to help the transition through perimenopause, what our hormones are as they're transitioning. It's also helping our gut. So it's kind of we're getting the benefit of both. We're not creating an inflammatory environment in our bodies that our bodies then have to, it taxes them more to deal with that, which makes our symptoms worse. But we're also helping our gut health so that it becomes more resilient, and
Mhm.
then we might not feel the symptoms as badly because our gut health is improving, and therefore the entire inflammation system in our bodies are also improving.
You talk about root cause healing instead of quick fixes. Can you tell us a bit what's an example of root cause healing versus what are quick fixes?
Yeah. So root cause I deal with because this is sort of, I spent so much time being told about quick fixes. And what happens is that they may alleviate a symptom in the moment, but it's not addressing why is that symptom here? Like what's causing that symptom in my body? As we know, because I also studied Ayurveda, like when the body has what it needs, the body knows how to heal.
Mhm.
And so I'm always curious when there's a symptom, like, where is this coming from? What is the imbalance? What is the body needing? So, root cause is meaning like we're focused on that. We're focused on, for instance, if there's exhaustion, it's not just about let me have caffeine or let me, do something to rev myself up. It's about why am I feeling exhausted? Am I not getting good quality sleep? Am I not hydrating? Am I missing nutrients? Are my hormones out of balance? I'm really interested in the why, because when we address things on that level, that is what allows us to then create lasting change. we not only create lasting change where those symptoms may not come back, but our bodies are then also more resilient as we start to go through changes, that we can go through them more gracefully.
So, would you say that taking supplements like melatonin for sleep, or would that be a quick fix, or does that help with root cause?
So taking melatonin for sleep, and I'm not against that, right? It's a natural supplement. I know people who do that. I personally myself have not seen any evidence that it helps over the long term, but
Mm,
I don't have anything against that. But that I would consider a quick fix because that is about how can I sleep better tonight? And I
right.
am giving my body something that it requires to sleep better tonight, but it's still not addressing why am I not sleeping well. So there are two problems usually with sleep: the difficulty in going to sleep, and then the
Mhm.
difficulty staying asleep in the night, people who wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. And so I'm always really curious, well, why is that happening, right? I'd rather get to the root of why can't I fall asleep, or why am I waking up in the night, and solve that question so that it doesn't happen anymore. And so that we don't have to take external things to help it when it does happen.
So, what is the root cause, or what should we really do when it comes to sleep if you can't fall asleep or if you can't stay asleep?
Yeah. So great question, because sleep is such a huge topic, especially in the land of hormone balance, and even just in overall health. So there's so many places we could go with this, but to keep it focused on when we can't fall asleep and when we wake up in the night. So there is a dance. We have two primary hormones that are in charge of our sleep, and that is cortisol and melatonin. And this is a simplified description because we can get very complex with all the different factors going into this. But in order to look at it in this way, as it starts to get dark, our cortisol starts to drop off, which allows our melatonin to start to come up. Melatonin is what we need to feel tired and to be able to go to sleep.
Mhm.
And so then it peaks in the first part of the night, usually around midnight or so, and it starts to drop off during the night in order for cortisol to start to come up and allow us to wake up the next morning. Cortisol is then responsible for us feeling alert and clear and able to focus and energized. And so this is a dance that they do every single day. Cortisol drops, melatonin comes up, we can go to sleep. Melatonin comes down, cortisol goes up, we can wake up and feel alert and awake. So when one of those is out of whack, as we know, modern day life has led us into living a lot of cortisol high, right? That's when we're under chronic stress. And stress does not mean that stressful things are happening to us. Stress is literally how our body is perceiving the current moment. When we are rushing around all day to run our errands, to get things done in those 5 free minutes we have, to get
Mhm.
a deadline done, whatever it is, if you're rushing all day long, the body is perceiving that as stressful. So there may be elevated cortisol happening there. Also, we may have either, things from our past that make certain situations in our life extremely stressful for us. So it's also how we're perceiving the experience of our life. And then also we work a lot, we pack a lot into our days, we're trying to achieve a lot, especially as women, right? If there are children involved and there's a career involved, there's just so many things, social life. So that leaves us a lot of the time running on this cortisol high during the day. It's go, go, go mode. What
Mhm.
happens then is that's disrupting the ability for cortisol to come down at the end of the day. So that can lead a lot of women to having difficulty in going to sleep because the cortisol
Mhm.
hasn't completely come down. Maybe they've also been drinking coffee to try to feel more alert. And then melatonin can't completely come up. And so as melatonin tries to rise as it's getting dark, we may at some point get sleepy enough to fall asleep. But the first problem, maybe if you can't get to sleep, it could be the high cortisol in that moment. And there are different things that we can do leading up to sleep that help with that. And then when we wake up in the middle of the night, it could just be the fact that with that cortisol high, we were able to get to sleep, but melatonin never quite got up to its level to help us have the good quality deep sleep. And that will then have us wake up at night, thoughts racing. And then, of course, the next day when we have to get up and do our day again, we're not feeling well rested. We're feeling foggy. we're just not feeling ourselves because we're not rested, right? We're feeling a
Yeah.
bit of that fatigue and that exhaustion, which may lead to drinking more coffee and having
Right.
that whole cycle go on.
Right. So, would you say that using our devices at night is the worst thing a woman can do in perimenopause?
It's one of the worst things, yes. Drinking coffee at night might be worse, but yes, being on our devices, it's known that that blue light from devices and actually any
Right.
bright light is
Yeah.
disrupting melatonin and cortisol
Yeah.
because part of what triggers melatonin to rise is it getting dark out. If we're
Yeah.
honoring our bodies as organic beings, right, they're responding to the environment. Our circadian rhythms are
Yeah.
very important in helping those hormones get triggered to be released. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, being on our devices is one of the things that will make it really hard for us to get enough melatonin to get good sleep.
Thank you for that explanation. That really, it really helps me understand, what's really at play and causing us to not be able to fall asleep.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, for someone who is, you know, you can't really change the reality of your life, whether it's, with kids, work, you do have to rush, you do have to get to work, get the kids to school, and so on. Would you say that an evening ritual practice every evening, like an hour before sleep, whether you do, yin yoga, some kind of thing that winds you down, meditation, some relaxation practice, taking a bath, would you say that this is something that would help women fall asleep and stay asleep better?
Yeah, those practices absolutely help. I've had clients who have that has been like the thing they have just started with, and it's already made a big difference, just even that. However, I'm also aware of the reality that for some women, even that just seems like not possible. So it
Mhm.
really depends where we're at in our life, what is expected of us in our life, and also to always remember the choices that we're making, right? There's always, and this is, I work a lot with women on this because there's a way that sometimes we feel that we have to because it's just how we were brought up and just the way we look at our life. And it's
Mhm.
not always the case that the way we're doing our life is how we have to do it. There sometimes
Yeah.
is a way to make a different choice, either get support, either do things differently. It's hard choices. I know I've been there and I've made them, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's worth it for a certain part of life where we need a little more support in a certain way.
Yeah.
So I want to also honor those that don't have a lot of time, let's say to like draw a bath, do yin yoga, that even something like a few minutes of a breathing ritual, like a breath work exercise
Mhm.
before sleep, having some gratitude thoughts even as we're laying our head down on our pillow, like we're brushing our teeth, like in a lot of the daily things that we're doing anyway, we can build in some practices to help that relaxation. And then
Yeah.
if you can once or twice a week, or if you can every night, that's fantastic. Build in a meditation practice. Yin yoga is fabulous because it's moving the body in ways that's allowing it to settle down from the day, work out some of the energy from the day, and bring it into the possibility of getting really good rest as a whole body. Or drawing a bath is another great way to release energy from the day and really help the body relax. So all of those, if you can build those in, are perfect.
And that's really the mindset piece of
Yeah.
really looking at everything that you're rushing in life that you feel like you have to do. Really, how many of those you really have to do and why do you think you have to do them?
Yeah.
And maybe you can choose differently, and how can you shift things so you can just start prioritizing yourself a little bit more, some kind of self-nourishment so that you can show up in life and be present with your family, with your work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, it's such an important part of this because as we change, it's normal for us to realize that we can't live our lives the way we did as a teenager or a
Yeah.
20-year-old or a 30-year-old. Like we change as we go through life. And so it would be normal that we would start to do life in a different way as well. But a lot of
Yeah.
times we're just running on our old programs. And I know many women, especially when they have kids, where the programming is really, I need to get things done for others first before
Mhm.
I get to what's important to me.
Yeah.
And that's a place where we can start to look at and say, is that really true? And start to look at, yeah, like what are ways where I could, as you said, prioritize myself in certain ways that will help me in this phase, support my body, support my mindset, support my emotions and my entire life so that I'm creating a life that feels supportive to me.
Yeah. Yeah. For myself, the mindset shift that I had to go through was dropping this idea that being able to do everything means I'm better, means I'm more valuable, and that I want to and in my 20s and 30s I could just keep going. And I loved that. I loved how much I could achieve. And then there's this belief that the more you achieve, the more valuable or the better you are somehow. And the idea of slowing down, it means you're going to be doing less. And well, I don't have time to do less. I'll do less when I'm like, retired. And then, coming into the 40s and realizing I don't want to, I can't keep this up. I would, go, 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 and then crash for a few days where I'm like, screw everything. Nothing is important anymore. And then slowly come back from that. And then realizing, okay, I don't want to do these like, run and crash cycles anymore. How can I just do it more sustainably? And really working on the belief that my value is somehow tied to my productivity.
That
Yeah.
is so brilliant. I love hearing your story because I relate to it completely. And there was such a long part of my life where I really battled, I feel like almost against my body because my
Mhm.
mind had all these ideas of what I wanted to do in the world. And I just felt like my body was getting in the way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it can't keep up, right?
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
to realize that, especially in this phase of life, is our chance to drop in and realize the power that we have in that stillness within us.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that is where the wisdom comes for how to live life in a
Right.
way that's so impactful beyond what we could have imagined and sustainable for our
Yeah.
wellness.
Yeah. And then one last thing I want to add is ever since I've shifted that mindset and actually took time to slow down and really tune in, I realized that when you spend that time doing the introspection and really tuning into what is your deeper desire. Then, when you are acting, your actions are much more aligned. You are doing less, but when you do, you're on point as opposed to doing everything. And then most of the stuff is not really the main things you should be focusing on, anyways.
I completely
Yeah.
agree. I feel it's such a powerful statement because that I feel like we've been taught to live a lot reacting to the external stimulus of the world and what we're meant to achieve in that external way, and not as much time spent on the inner,
Hmm.
on how to really align with our power, with our truth, so that when we take action, exactly as you said, right? That is action that lands. That is
Yeah.
action that has big impact, but it's with ease.
Yes. Yeah. With ease. I think this is a lesson that every woman going through perimenopause is going to learn how to do life with more ease, and that you're supposed to live life with more ease and not with more rushing and more chaos. One thing that I think every woman can start doing is what is the one shift or one change you can do that can just bring more ease in your life? And then start doing that for taking that first step to gain some more energy back, and then you can take more steps.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I've seen with that is that, sometimes we get when we're in overwhelm, because a lot of times we are in stress and overwhelm in that phase. And so the thought of like, what can I do even feels overwhelming. And so to even start with like an intention of, can I let it be easy?
Mhm. Yeah.
And just allowing that to land and being like, okay, if I can be open to ease,
Mhm.
and now I can find something to do that will make something a bit more easeful in my day, that starts to create a really deep shift because if it's possible with one thing, it's possible with a lot of things.
Yes. Yeah, and when you start putting on that lens, it's just a matter of practice of putting on that lens every day to look at life from the lens of ease.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, because we're programmed differently, right? So making those changes can sometimes be hard. In my case, that's why that support was so important for me during that time of healing is a lot of it was to keep me accountable to wake up each day and know like I am living now according to new tenets that
Mm-hmm.
align more with what I believe, with my values, not with the programming that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And not that
Yep.
that was wrong, it just was a different era, right? And
Right.
in this
Yeah.
stage of my life, I need this. But to make that change when we've lived in a certain way for decades, it does take that daily check-in to make
Yeah.
sure that, like, okay, like I'm on board now. And maybe some days there's parts of us that are not on board. We're
Yeah.
like, ease, I just can't imagine it. That's okay, right? That's okay. We're just curious as to how ease might be able to manifest in our day.
Yeah. You say that hormones are reactive and they're also responsive. Can you tell us a bit more on how they're reactive and what do they respond to?
Yeah, I love this about hormones because it was one of the things I realized that I was like, this is incredible because these are things that we actually have some agency over,
Mhm.
right? So what the good news about hormones is that they do respond to lifestyle shifts, right? We don't have to enter supplementation medication right away. They do respond to lifestyle shifts. The bad news is that they respond to lifestyle shifts. So, as we start to live a life that is taxing our bodies, maybe we're eating refined processed foods, inflammatory foods, lots of sugar, lots of caffeine or alcohol. As we're rushing around feeling stressed all the time, maybe we're having thoughts that we're overwhelmed. It's never going to work out for me. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this day. Like all these kinds of things that is creating an environment that is going to shift our hormones because they are reacting as soon as we're stressed, we're releasing cortisol, right? Even
Mm,
though these days most of us are not running away from a life threatening emergency, the minute we feel stress, whether it's perceived stress or actual stress, the body releases cortisol. And as cortisol gets released, it is deprioritizing the production of our sex hormones or the release of our sex hormones, which means that the whole hormone balance that we've got going on is now going to be thrown off kilter. So when we're in stress, which is fight or flight mode, we do not need to prioritize digestion or reproduction. So immediately the body will deprioritize the hormones responsible for good digestion and reproduction. And when we're running on chronic stress, meaning
mhm,
every day and most of the day, we can see how that's going to create immediately almost a hormone shift that over time leads to these awful symptoms, as well as over a long period of time leads to illness.
mhm,
So that's why it's so important to catch these things and to know these things earlier to start to see how can we start to create a life that's more aligned with us. Now, the good news is the minute we do know about this and we can start to make some changes, our hormones do come back into balance.
mm,
This is, of course, not talking about there are autoimmune issues. There are some conditions that do create hormone imbalance, and that is outside of what we're talking about. But in
mhm,
terms of these hormone shifts that are happening from lifestyle issues, we can also bring those back into balance within a short time. I mean, certain things can happen within days and other things within weeks or months. And we can actually bring our entire hormone balance, back into a place where it is serving our bodies. We're
yeah.
becoming more resilient, more healthy, and we feel good.
So it sounds like stress management is the number one in order to support rebalancing our estrogen and progesterone.
Yes. You're absolutely right because I've seen this lately. I mean, when I first started, I felt like there was like, the trilogy of, stress management, gut health, and then like other lifestyle things like sleep, that are super important. But what we've really seen lately in the science is that even if you're eating all the right things, if you are under stress, your body's not able to assimilate a lot of those nutrients.
Mm, yeah.
And so stress ends up really being, I think, the big one also because it's one that we all tend to experience in modern day life.
Yeah. When you were talking about your experience, you said, once you started implementing these changes, within a few weeks, your energy came back, and within a couple of months, you were back to normal and feeling even better than you did before. Can you tell us what were the main things, like the changes that created the most change for you, that made the biggest difference?
Yeah. So one was to get regular nutrient-dense foods. So, I had had these high-paced careers. I mean, I was really attached to my green juices and green smoothies, but throughout the course of the day, there wasn't a whole lot of time to eat, to get proper nutrition throughout the day on a daily basis and throughout the day. So that was one change I made where it was like proper nutrition every day, not
Mm,
just when there's time for it. Because if we really start to track our nutritional intake, we will mostly realize that we are not getting enough of what we need. So it's normal then that the body after a certain time would start to break down. So that was one thing, was really nutrient dense foods regularly. Number two was movement, body movement. So also when I'm busy, I was deprioritizing exercise. And so just finding a way at that time, I wasn't doing anything like high intensity because I had been coming from fatigue, but it was even things like relaxing yoga, going for walks in nature, any kind of body movement that
mhm.
gets your circulation going, your lymph going. That is very beneficial hormonally also, and also mood wise. And then the other thing was, really working on the mindset and the stress reduction piece, as we were talking about, because that improved my sleep right away. And as soon as we can improve our sleep, we will also feel more energized right away.
Yeah.
Also, sleep is where the body repairs.
Mm.
Right? It's where the brain repairs, the body repairs, it's where the hormones get back in sync. And so sleep is so important for all those reasons that once that got dialed in, then I was feeling a lot better. So those were the main things that I did back then.
Can you give us an idea about what does proper nutrition look like so that our listeners can identify if what they're eating today is proper nutrition or not?
Yeah, and this again is something that changes over time, depending on what phase of life we're in, depending on what kind of a life we live, right? Like how active we are, what our workout looks like. So it's different for everyone, but the basics are you want to be getting a lot of plant foods, fruits and
Mm.
vegetables. That is not only good for because it nourishes our cells, all the different micronutrients that are in those nourish our cells, but the fiber in them is super important during perimenopause and menopause. When
Mm,
we are going through perimenopause, there are times where our progesterone might be low, that might leave our estrogen high. And there is a condition, estrogen dominance, which certain women experience. The body releases excess estrogen through bowel movements.
mm,
So when we are getting regular fiber, it's easier for our body to balance our levels of estrogen. Now, if we're not getting enough fiber, what happens is the body tends to reabsorb excess estrogen. So that leaves us even more estrogen dominant. So plants and vegetables are important for many reasons, especially during this phase of life. And then protein. Protein is key. We need to be
mm,
getting enough protein, and for each person, that's different based on the workout and what kind of lifestyle you live. But, basically getting to know what is it that my body needs. Protein is a building block. And so we
mhm,
need to be getting clean forms of protein. And then good fats, right? Fatty acids, the good ones, either through supplementation or through healthy forms of eating foods like salmon, avocados, ways to get the good fatty acids. So those are the main things that would encompass proper nutrition. I include hydration in there too, because without enough water, it's hard for the body to function well as well. So being
mhm.
properly hydrated, making sure that we get enough water throughout the day, it's also something I measure because that's also been something that's I have found very hard in my life to drink enough water, especially when I'm busy and moving around a lot. So I make sure that I'm looking at my water intake and whether
Yeah.
that's with electrolytes or without, however it works best for you, but getting enough water is also key.
Okay. It sounds like fiber is one of the keys to clearing out estrogen to prevent estrogen dominance. How can one know if they have estrogen dominance?
So there are symptoms that you'll have. Of course, a lot of these symptoms are pretty similar with different hormone imbalances. So sometimes it's hard to know, is that because of an estrogen dominance or another hormone imbalance? The way I found out for myself is you can go to your doctor and get a blood test taken at specific times in your cycle.
Mhm.
So on specific days, at specific time, you go in and they can measure it. So that's one way to know is through your doctor. The symptoms are exhaustion, brain fog, gaining some weight in your thighs and belly, um, hair falling out. You may feel more irritable or more depressed. So, but these are also symptoms that happen with other hormone imbalances. So sometimes it's hard to know specifically that that is
Mhm.
estrogen dominance at work. So getting it tested is good. But also, if you just increase your fiber intake
Yeah.
and you start to feel better, that's a sign. Because we
Yeah.
can, in the early stages of these things, we can actually make the difference just through these lifestyle shifts and things come back into balance.
Yeah. And then you mentioned clean protein. What's clean or versus not clean protein?
Yeah, so if you eat meat, is just discerning what kind of meat you're going to eat, right? Because there's meat out there. If you, let's say, eat red meat or even chicken, poultry, there's a lot of meat out there that is injected with hormones so that they grow bigger, have more meat on their bodies, and the person can sell more meat from the
Mhm.
animal. So if we are eating those animals that have been injected with hormones, we are also ingesting those hormones. And that can also lead to hormone imbalances. So clean meats would mean absolutely no hormones, ideally no antibiotics. If it's red meat, then ideally grass fed. If it's poultry, pasture raised. So as clean as you can find, something that's not going to have either toxins, which are also endocrine disruptors and will imbalance hormones, or hormones themselves, which if we're ingesting makes it hard for our body to stay balanced.
Okay. Let's talk a little about lifestyle.
Mhm.
When we make lifestyle changes in perimenopause, where hormones naturally fluctuate and, increase our sensitivity to stress and blood sugar swings, when we're making lifestyle changes, so you did mention that it influences hormone levels, for example, when we control our stress. But I'm curious if these lifestyle changes also keeping us within a range so we don't spike blood sugar or spike anything and stay within a range because our body is sensitive to like spikes and crashes, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So we're in a way doing this for two reasons. One is, let's say, in the example of blood sugar, right? So if we are eating refined processed carbohydrates or sugar itself, we are going to create a spike of, first there's sugar, then is there insulin response, right? That's the part that creates the inflammation. And with perimenopause, we start to become more insulin resistant, which
Yeah.
means that there's then more sugar floating around our system, and that is creating inflammation as well. So,
Hmm.
what we're trying to do is, yes, stay within, a sort of a boundary that is more balanced for the body. But what we're also doing is giving our body a chance to heal from, because we can't be perfect in this modern world, right? We are
Yeah.
going to be exposed to toxins, to certain things that aren't ideal to eat, maybe not the best water. They're just different, and stress, obviously. So, what we're trying to do is give our bodies the best chance to be resilient against the things that they need to fend off or need to sort of come back into balance from, and not give them more stuff to deal with. Like the more we eat sugar, now the body needs to deal with this. And then when you put stress on top of that, that can sometimes be the things that pushes us over the edge into a condition or an illness or something. So what we're trying to do is the better we can be about these lifestyle shifts, not only we help bring our hormones back into balance through these lifestyle shifts, but we also create a body that has a better chance to heal and to be more resilient for what it does have to deal with on a daily basis. And then if we don't get proper sleep one night, like we're okay, because every other night we've been sleeping pretty well. Or, with the inflammation response, right? If we eat sugar one day, the body can handle that because it's ready. But when we're eating it every day and the body is kind of being, sort of just bombarded with things that it has to deal with every day, that's a lot of energy expenditure that the body needs to deal with toxicity, bringing things back into balance. That's energy that we then don't have available for maybe other functions that we might want, like good digestion to get as much nutrient as we can from what we are eating, or even, things like a reproductive function if we want to have babies. So, in perimenopause and menopause, we start to just want our energy so that we can feel well, so that we can, regenerate like tissues and skin and hair and just feel well in our life. So there are a lot of reasons why it's helpful both for the hormone balance as well as making our bodies more resilient.
And where do you stand on coffee?
I know there are coffee lovers, and then there are people who are against coffee. I personally had a hard time with coffee because I was so sensitive to caffeine. I love the taste of it. I will sometimes have decaf coffee, but so as a personal person, I'm not like a huge fan because I have to have it. I know many people who are. And so what I'll say about coffee is it has its benefits if it's taken at appropriate times in appropriate amounts.
Yeah.
So one benefit it has is that if it's taken at an appropriate time in the morning, which is not first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, but like
Right.
after we've had proper nutrition, it can help with bowel movements, which in the case, as we were talking about estrogen dominance or balancing estrogen, that's a good thing, right? We want a little caffeine in the body, helps motility in our gut, and gut motility at this age is good because that also starts to slow down. So it's good for that. It's also good because, we feel a bit more alert and a bit more awake. And so that's also a good thing. Any coffee on empty stomach is going to spike cortisol. That is
Mm.
a spike that you cannot come back from
Mm.
that day.
Hey, good to know.
Yeah.
Um, Even if I add milk to coffee?
Yeah. Unless you're having like a tiny coffee with a huge amount of milk, and then there might be a lot of sugar there that might be hard for the body. Yes, it's gonna, if it's on an empty stomach, even with a little bit of milk, I mean, with a ton of milk, maybe it's different, but depending on your ratio,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, you need to have kind of like nourished the body first, give the
Yeah.
body its nutrients that it needs, then caffeine can be helpful. The other thing about it is taking it late in the day, right?
Mm.
So anytime after 2 p.m., because it can have an effect for about 6 hours after you take
Right.
it. So that
Yeah.
can be very sleep disruptive. People have a 4 p.m. meeting at work, and that's the time where everybody is crashing and
Yeah.
everybody wants that cup of coffee just to get through that
Right.
meeting. And that will disrupt sleep that night, and then kind of create a whole cycle of then like not feeling awake the next day, drinking more coffee. So coffee is neither good nor bad. It depends on
Mm.
when you have it, in what dose you have it, and how you handle it. Like for me personally, I could not. My body's too sensitive to it. But there are people who thrive on it. So
Yeah.
it's about knowing your own health and your own boundaries and what works for you.
Right. So it comes down again to you have to test it yourself. And then general guidelines is don't start coffee on an empty stomach and don't have coffee past 2 p.m. And it's so true about the bowel movement. When I go on retreat sometimes where there's no coffee, I can feel a difference. I also love coffee. So what I do now is I do half decaf, half caffeinated.
Hmm.
So, and I do only one shot and with I do a small latte. So I can have two coffees, like one around, 8 o'clock and one around 11.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So you
Yeah,
have found
and
what
it's
works for
working.
you, and that's the important thing because it is something to enjoy. I mean, I love it too, even though I can't drink the caffeinated one, but having like a frothy, like cozy latte, I drink a lot of turmeric lattes or adaptogen lattes as a way to get that cozy drink. And so it is sometimes something that we really want. So finding a way where that can work for us is important because it's part of the pleasure of life too. Like we're here to
Yeah,
be fully living our lives, right? Like luscious, pleasurable, amazing lives. Like we do not want to cut that part out. What we're trying
yeah,
to do is do it in a way that supports our bodies.
yeah. And then one interesting thing I noticed is so I have an Aura ring
Hmm.
that measures my sleep and it also measures my stress and it gives me a stress graph. And when I used to take just a full, one shot coffee and I would see the spike, like it would show me stress level within 20 minutes. And every shot of coffee I take, it's, spikes to like above the stress level. And ever since I did half decaf, it'll go into the engaged zone, but not to the stress zone. So I'm like, oh, that is interesting. So this is working. Like at least my ring is telling me that I'm, not spiking myself twice a day in the morning.
Perfect. I think you should really put that out there because I think everyone can benefit from hearing that direct experience because that's exactly what's happening. And a lot of times, just because people are in the habit of having their
Yeah.
coffees and how much they want to have, they don't notice what it's
Yeah,
doing to their adrenals, to how they're feeling during the day. Are they getting anxious later in the day? Then they feel the crash. When you feel the
right.
crash, you want sugar. Then they go for sugary things. That's creating another spike in crash of a different kind. So there's a lot that goes into it, that just a simple tracking like you did to find how can I have my coffee without having the stress spike is brilliant, Wendy.
And then one thing I just want to add is I hear this a lot, especially from Stacy Sims, that you want to have some protein intake within the hour of waking up.
Mhm.
Because in this season, we tend to be more stressed and our cortisol spikes. You don't want to do workouts in a fasted state. You want to have protein within an hour of waking. And in the morning, I can't really eat. I can't start eating. So I'll do a protein shake and then I'll have my coffee after that with some milk, just so I have something in my belly to like buffer the caffeine effect. And I have noticed that starting the morning with 30 grams of protein, it really controls my hunger throughout the day. Like there is no craving like I used to before. I don't find myself suddenly super starving and just wanting to eat my whole fridge. Yeah.
That is so true. And I think that's exactly right. And I can only speak to it at sort of perimenopause and menopause time, because prior to that, I had no idea about how stabilizing protein is. So in my younger years, I didn't really know about that. And what I
Hmm.
do know now, and most of the women I'm working with now are in this phase of life, is that protein is key exactly for what you're describing. It not only gives the body the building blocks it needs. So first of all, it's helping our muscles. Our muscles are the primary way that takes up glucose from our bloodstream. So the
Yeah.
more we can have an intake of protein and then work out in some way, the easier we're making it on our body to take up any sugar that we're taking in during the day. And then the other effect it's having is that stabilizing, right? So it is helping to release the hormone leptin, which is
Hmm.
responsible for our feeling of satiety. And it's suppressing ghrelin, which is the one that makes us feel all like we're craving and I've got to go eat everything in my fridge and like right now. And so getting ourselves to a place where we can feel that balance, like we're satisfied in a balanced way, that
Hmm.
comes from doing exactly what you've done, is finding what does my body need at certain times of the day, making sure we get that.
Yeah.
Because once we get that, then we are not at the whim of our cravings anymore. And those
Yeah.
cravings can lead us to eating exactly the wrong things because it's easy, it's accessible. It's like when you have a craving, the body just wants the quickest form of energy. And
Yeah.
the quickest form of energy is something processed and sugary.
Right.
So it's a biological, it's like not our fault. It's like that is how we're wired. So when we
Hmm.
can give the body things like a regular intake of protein and nutrients throughout the day, we then have the best chance of avoiding that craving cycle. And by the way, also too much caffeine, when we hit that spike, that stress point, because that
Hmm.
leads us also to high cortisol, that also leads to cravings. So also the stress reduction and not having too much caffeine that lead us to that spike zone also helps with cravings.
Oh, interesting. Because I was going to ask you, what are the things that cause craving? So you just mentioned having too much caffeine and having cortisol spikes
Yes.
and
So
not
basically,
nourishing
it's a
yourself.
cortisol spike, right? So if you have too much caffeine, you're running cortisol high. And then if you're under stress, you're running cortisol high. So it's the cortisol
Right.
high that is, again, suppressing leptin, which is the satiety
Mm,
hormone. And
okay.
so now we're just, at the whim of these cravings. And it makes these cravings a lot stronger in us.
Right.
And that's a biological reaction. It's really hard to bypass our biology. It's very
Yeah.
strong. So the best we can do is know about it and then give ourselves what we need in order to not go into those cycles. But yeah, after a stressful event, too much caffeine, we will have crazy cravings.
Okay.
And
What are
also for
your,
comfort, right? Like sugary stuff is also very comforting for people.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
after a stressful episode, and carbs are very calming for the body. So after a stressful episode, the body will crave carbs just to get
Hmm.
the comfort, the calming effect of the carbs. The body is trying to come back into balance, but it's sadly in a way that, especially at this time of life, is going to lead to an insulin spike and lead us to inflammation.
That is very interesting because for a long time, I would always crave chocolate around 4 p.m. And it had to be chocolate because it was the only thing that made me feel because 4 p.m. is not time to eat like comfort food. It's not dinner
Right.
time, right? So chocolate was the only thing that brought me that kind of a soothing comfort that I needed to just
Mhm,
get through the last hour of the day.
mhm.
Yeah.
Chocolate is also mood boosting. So,
Yes.
there is a way, like, actually, and if you're eating dark chocolate, that is actually not that bad for you because there's not a lot of sugar in that. The only thing with that is that it does have like sort of a caffeinated effect if you have too
Mhm.
much of it. So you don't want to have too much of it late in the day. But a lot of times, like a little piece of dark chocolate can be just the thing to take the edge off, to feel good, to not maybe binge on things that are worse for us, and
Yeah.
it actually helps with our mood.
Yeah, and having a controlled quantity because I
Mhm.
went to dark chocolate but at some point when the day is too, stressful, I was pushing too much. One square became like half a bar. And then
Yeah,
that's when I told myself, okay, just because it's good doesn't mean I can eat half a bar a day. Like this is getting out of hand. So
yeah,
really keeping it to just one square.
yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing because that will disrupt sleep. Like if you're having it late in the afternoon, then the effect of half a bar of dark chocolate, because dark chocolate is concentrated, right? Cacao,
Mhm.
that might be too much to allow you to go to sleep that night.
Yeah. What are your favorite ways to restore energy that don't involve supplements or stimulants? Just like
Mm.
everyday practice that
Mhm.
that we can do.
So I love connecting with nature. Taking a walk in nature really restores me. So if you live around nature or even a place that has trees around or everything, I feel like getting out in the sunlight, in the fresh air, connecting with nature, being in a different setting than the setting where I'm working or I'm getting things done. It's a place where I get extremely creative
Hmm.
because the brain is seeing different things, exposed to different things. And I love the creativity to me is very energizing because you start to feel back in touch with that creative power that we all have. So a
Hmm.
little, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, little brief walk in nature around some trees in the sunlight outside getting fresh air is one thing. Another thing is a calming body practice. Right. So either some breath work or some yin yoga or just even some light stretching with some light music playing in the background, just anything that helps me feel calm and connected to my body. So
Okay.
breathing and those body movements are great ways to connect to your body. Our bodies have so much wisdom. And we spend a lot of time in our minds. I mean, our minds are brilliant. They want to do all kinds of things out there. And we've prioritized the mind. Connecting with our body is so key because there is so much intelligence in here. And that
Yeah.
intelligence will come up and will make it to our brain if we give it a chance to, like if we connect with our body. So a breathwork practice or light movement helped me connect to my body. I also love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that because I used to spend all day just in the mind focused. And then I remember at the end of the day, I would describe it as like, I feel like I was run over by a truck and I just can't do anything right now. I just need to like zone out. I don't even have energy to listen to anything you have to say. I have zero interest. I just need to shut off somehow.
And how great is that for a relationship, right?
Yeah,
I relate completely, right? We've had too much input. We can't take another ounce of input. We just need like
right.
stillness, like I am full, I am done. And then the body is crashed out. I completely relate. And this is where we start to see these lifestyle choices that we're making, right? They're not just affecting our health or how we feel, they're
Mhm.
affecting our relationships with those we love. How do we show up for people we love when we
Mhm.
ourselves are maxed out and
Yeah.
done? And how do we show up to a career or even be able to have an idea of what we might want to achieve in a career if we're feeling maxed out, right? It starts to really limit a lot of aspects of our life that get affected, not just our health, but really parts that could make us, we could be having such a juicy, fulfilling, amazing life.
Yeah.
And it took me decades to kind of realize that I had the ability to make those changes.
For a woman listening who feels burnt out and unsure where to start, what's the one non negotiable habit that she can practice for the next 7 days to start shifting her energy?
That's a great question. And, one thing that's hard to answer one thing is because people are so different. And part
Mm,
of what I love is to work with people on easy to integrate first steps. That's the key. You need to have that first win where you start to feel better immediately to
mhm,
have what it takes to move further in your journey of healing and changing your life.
yeah.
So for some people, that is stress reduction, right? For some people, it's what we talked about. One practice could be those deep belly breaths, right? There's a practice of 3 breaths that takes no more than a few seconds. Your hand on your lower belly, you're focused on a soft lower belly, and you're trying to bring your breath without efforting, but just allowing it to move all the way down to that belly. It took me a while to be able to do that. I had the typical stress, shallow breathing up here in my chest. So just allowing that breath to move down to your lower belly and allowing that lower belly to expand as you inhale and then contract as you exhale. That's a deep belly breath. You do 3 of those, that signals to your nervous system, I'm back to
Mm,
calm, I'm back to safety. So that's a practice that's very fast. However, the reason I have that caveat in the beginning is that there's some people who are running so fast that that's a very hard thing for them to access as the
yeah.
first thing. So for some of them, it might be actually like, I need to take a walk around the block before I come home at night.
Okay.
And that's
Oh,
something that allows me to get back to myself, release the day. I'm breathing a little deeper anyway because I'm walking around the block or in nature, whatever. And I can come back to myself. But one practice that brings you back to yourself, ideally, if there's some deep breathing, it signals calm to your nervous system. And that can allow you to come back to knowing, like, all right, I'm here, I'm safe, and that allows you to get into sleep more easily.
mhm.
It may allow you to sleep better, which then changes the whole cycle of how you feel each day.
Yeah. I love that it's a breath practice because that's something that is just accessible to anyone at any time.
Right.
Just to take just a couple of minutes to just slow down the breath and
Yes.
just maybe closing your eyes and just tuning in just for a moment and reset everything back to uh, a harmonious baseline, just to
Yes.
reconnect with your body for a moment
Yes.
before you continue your day. Yeah.
Exactly, because the idea is not to keep ourselves from stress. I mean, there's
Right.
going to be stress in our life. The idea is to teach our bodies and to teach our nervous systems how to come back from stress more quickly, how to be more
Right.
resilient to stress. And so I used to do this like on the way to the bathroom when I had those high-paced jobs. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I got to go to the bathroom. On my way to the bathroom, I'm doing deep belly breaths to
Yeah.
bring my stress back. I'm doing it in the morning when I first wake up to set an intention for my day, create a
Right.
foundation for my day. I'm doing it at night before I go to sleep to have a little bit of gratitude for the day and help myself get into a place where I could go to sleep and maybe get deep, good quality sleep. So,
Right.
exactly as you said, it's something you can do in the moment, packing someone's lunch, brushing your teeth, whatever you're doing in the day, but it signals to the nervous system to come back to calm and it starts to groove that pathway where we have
Right.
the ability then to go from stress back to calm. And that's what
Right.
we want to practice is that ability
Yeah.
to come back to calm from stress.
Yeah. Breath is like the physical quick hack to get your body back to
Yeah.
calm. And then from the calm state, you can now maybe just spend a moment to um, look at how you're perceiving your current situation. Are you really in danger, or it's just a perceived, belief that you can release? So like, for example, today, I have to pack for tomorrow.
Hmm.
I'm my plane's taking off tomorrow morning, and we have this interview going on this morning. So I got in a full on stress mode. And then I kept telling myself, I have a whole day to pack. Like this interview is not going to take a whole day. But the fact that I didn't really finish the list of things to bring, it's like just so many things were on my mind. And I really had to take a moment to be able to drop that and be present for this interview and not take that stress with me and know that this worry is really just projected stories that I'm telling myself that I'm going to forget things. I have a whole day to do this, and once the interview's over, I can now dedicate all my attention to then packing, and I don't have to stress about it for the whole morning. So taking a moment to just question why you're stressed, Why do you think you need to do everything now when it doesn't have to? And trusting that you got this, maybe planning ahead of time, just having some clarity on your plan and your roadmap for the day can give you more clarity and less stress about having to get everything done and then worrying about forgetting things.
Yeah, and I love this example that you gave because I think this is something that people experience every single day, right? The overwhelm of all the things that we have yet to do. And so in this example, just look at who would you be if you were in that overwhelm of all the things that you have to do yet that you haven't done yet.
Right.
Imagine what you would be forgetting when you're making decisions from that place, when you're operating from that place, right? That's a fight or
Mhm.
flight place. It also
Right.
starts to shut down some of our brain function, right? When we're in fight or flight, we don't
Yeah.
have access to as much, right, in our brain when we're
Yeah.
operating from those states. So you might forget things, which is the very thing that's causing your stress, is thinking you might forget things.
Right. Yeah.
And as you took the time and just noticed, right, what's happening with you and switched your state to realize, like, oh, these are stories I'm telling myself, right? I can come back to calm. I know that I can take this action. I can be in the here and now and trust that I will have what I need in the moment where I start to pack. From
Yeah.
that calm state, you are less likely to forget things because
Right.
your entire brain is online. Your creativity center is online and all of you is present for that activity. So I find like that's such a beautiful example because I bet people go through these kinds of things every single day. And we
Mm.
start to realize how just making these small shifts can completely change even the outcome of what we're doing, but
Mhm.
certainly the experience of how we're doing it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you, Daphne, for sharing your wisdom and helping us see how much power we have through lifestyle and the simple choices that can shift how we feel day to day. Where can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your work?
So, as you know, I'm always happy to talk about this. I'm so passionate about this message out there. You can DM me on Instagram at Daphne Myers Coaching. And I have a website, daphnemyers.com, if you're interested in support for your journey of hormone balancing. That's one thing that I find really important in this message is that we don't have to do this alone. I
Right.
certainly found that that was the key to my journey was getting the support that I needed to go through certain parts of the journey. So if you feel like you want some advice on what kind of support you might need, or if you're looking for support, then you can certainly reach me also on my website, daphnemyers.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn at Daphne Myers.
If this episode resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on one small shift you can start this week, something that supports your body and energy in the season of life. To be notified when new podcast episodes drop, including our upcoming conversations with a family physician and a gynecologist, make sure you're signed up for my newsletter at ownyourbecoming.com. You won't want to miss it. And if you'd like more support creating a lifestyle that works with your hormones, not against them, connect with me on Instagram or Facebook at Own Your Becoming. All the links will be in the show notes. And remember, you own your becoming one choice and one experiment at a time. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.